Welcome to Sal and Pal's Go to the Movies. I am here with my friend Touly. How is it going, Touly?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you for asking.
And today we're going to review Ant-Man and the Wasp. But before we get into it, there will be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. As Scott Lang balances between both a superhero and a father, Hope Van Dyke and Dr. Hank Pym present an urgent new mission that finds Ant-Man fighting alongside the Wasp to uncover the secrets from their past. Okay, so this movie came out. We couldn't review it on time because me and Touly, we attended a convention. I think we posted up on Facebook, but we got around to it. We went to see it. And I don't know about you, Touly, but I wasn't really happy about the outcome of this movie.
I sort of feel the same way. I definitely thought that it was one of the least impactful Marvel film that I've seen as of late. Ant-Man and the Wasp kind of fell a little short compared to the more recent Marvel movies that have come out this year, particularly, the Black Panther and Infinity Wars. Even if I weren't comparing it to those Marvel movies too, I still feel that it was lacking, that it was lacking that thing that makes Marvel superhero movies great. Like, I felt like it had like a villain, it had all the elements to a movie or to a Marvel movie, but it wasn't on the level that made me feel I wanted to be invested in these characters. I thought that they just used a lot of comedy because of Ant-Man's skills, or the skills that these the Wasp and Ant-Man has, of them being able to shrink or grow in size. I thought they just took advantage of that to kind of push the story along. But yeah, like the story itself, like I didn't feel very committed to it. Like the only thing that really got me excited, I already expected it to happen, was the post-credit scene, because I guess we'll talk about it later because it ties in with Infinity Wars. But yeah, that was the only part that made me kind of gasp a little bit, even though I knew or was expecting something like that to happen. Yeah, everything else, it was pretty bland. I like it, but it wasn't what I was hoping for it to be. I mean, ironically, because one of the the character's name is Hope, so I just find that a little funny.
I totally agree with you. This, to me, the analogy I gave, the first movie was like a science project that you knocked out of the ballpark, that you took forever to make, stood out, or basically held his ground. But then for your second project, you come up with, oh shit, I forgot that it was due Monday, I'm doing it Sunday night project, which we all have done, and you know how half-assed it comes out. Yeah, you have all the elements, but you don't take care of it enough to make the project detailed. There's things, the whole element there, like you said, the villain, the story, everything's there, but it's not taken seriously. It's not developed. Some characters had, to me, it seems like they just got planned right there and then and said, here, this is the new guy, or this is the villain, this is so-and-so, without even giving much thought. The main thing they focused on was how to tie it into Infinity Wars. That's how I felt.
Yeah, the one thing that I was hoping that one of these characters in the film, I mean, you can make an argument, but I wish that one of these characters would have gone over the like crossed the line. That's how you normally expect from like Marvel movies or just movies in general, where there's like a conflict of interest. Yeah, and I thought that Ghost was going to be like one of these characters who was going to cross the line, but the person who was watching over her, Bill Foster, he convinced her otherwise, because she at one point was going to go and kidnap or do something to Lane's daughter to kind of gain advantage of, or gain an upper hand, so that she could get the laboratory, so that she could find a way to cure herself. I mean, that could have been a point like where she would have crossed the line, but Bill was like, don't do that. If you touch her, then you touch the daughter, then we're through. I'm not going to help you anymore. So she always seemed to be in this state where she's a bad guy, but she's not really the bad guy, because she wants to do things, for, I guess for the lack of term, politically correct. She doesn't want to, I mean, she said that she's killed people. She's done things that she's not proud of, but we don't actually see that transpired really in real time. It's just like a narration. And I guess that's also the thing that I've always brought up in our podcast, where I'm not a big fan of then just explaining somebody's backstory within a quick time span. That doesn't get me invested into like a character like Ghost. I like the idea behind her powers and stuff. That's very fascinating, but how it was presented to the audience from, you know, them telling what happened to her and her parents, how they died and how she survived, and but then she couldn't physically be in contact with anything because of what happened. Again, I wish things like that were told throughout the movie, so it kind of gives me an incentive to pay attention more. But for them to just blurt it out within like a 5 to 10 minute time span, that didn't sit well with me. And then Ant-Man himself, him just being under house arrest and having to always go back to the house whenever the FBI would go there to check on him. And I felt like he wasn't being treated as a serious character. That was pretty much his motive. He was conflicted, of course, in trying to help Hope and Hank, you know, with their little project of, you know, saving Hank's wife and Hope's mom. Yeah, I mean, like, the conflict, it just wasn't like impactful enough for me to be invested into it. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
No, I totally agree with you, Touly. The fact that the villains weren't that developed kind of gave me the feeling like I shouldn't think of this character as a villain. There should be somebody else. At one point of the movie, I even believed that Bill Foster was going to be the mastermind behind everything, forcing Ghost to do this by convincing her that, oh, this is the way, you know, we have to do this because I know how to fix you. And at the end, he was going to betray her. But it didn't turn out that way. So most of this movie had me thinking that the villains were not 100% villains. They were like, oh, this guy has a motive to do bad things, but he's not the bad guy. Well, she is the bad guy, but she doesn't have the full motive to do something like that. Like the scene that you said that she was going to kidnap the daughter. See, if that would have gone through, it would have changed the story completely. It would have gotten us invested in that character, saying like, whoa, something pushed her to the point where, you know, she did this. You know, one thing is being sent by S.H.I.E.L.D. and the government to kill people, but another thing is to kidnap somebody's daughter just to force his hand. So that's one of the things that I had to pinpoint. Before we go into what we didn't like about the movie a lot, let's say some good things about the movie. First, I liked some of the casting, which we've seen Michael Douglas in this in Ant-Man before. We also seen him because we reviewed Falling Down, but Michael Douglas in this movie seemed to me like he was more concerned on something else, which basically is his wife, trying to bring her back and staying away from the FBI or staying under the radar. Next, actor Walton, he is the bad guy, the guy who's trying to sell Hank the gadget. He's also been in the Hateful Eight, Tomb Raider, which came out recently, and Django Unchained. So that character, to me, he's done other bad guys and borderline racist characters, if you want to talk about the Hateful Eight. But in this movie, he kind of nailed it. To me, he wasn't really like black market dealer. He was more of wanted to start off becoming a dealer, and he ended up doing some things that we as the audience found comical. In that sense, that kind of brought another element to the Ant-Man and Wasp, because Ant-Man and Wasp to me was a complete joke, to put it out there. Not saying that it's a bad thing to be a funny Marvel movie, because Thor Ragnarok kind of took that route. But the thing that I enjoyed about this movie, one that I enjoyed, was Michael Peña's character, Luis. Luis was recapping everything when they injected him with the truth serum. So that segment of him reviewing or recapping the storyline was hilarious. And we saw him do it in the first movie, and a lot of fans wanted it back. So the good thing is that they gave us what we wanted. But other than that, we didn't get anything. Unless you think about the truth serum joke. Other than that, I couldn't see anything that made this movie stand out for other Marvel movies. So one of the biggest things that I need to complain about this movie is, to me, I felt that it was a filler movie, even though the script had been planned for a long time, or the actual movie had been planned. The script could be another reason that maybe they had another draft and they just keep re-editing. But to me, this felt like they were more concerned how this movie would tie into Infinity Wars, other than developing this movie as a standalone movie. The other thing is Bill Foster, played by Lawrence Fishburne. His character seemed to be flat. And I was not really invested in that character, even though I heard his story saying that he worked with Hank betrayed him. We need more than that. We were not familiar. Well, basically some comic book fans will be familiar with the universe, but other people who go to this movie are not really familiar with all these other characters. So we need a little bit backstory to them. I'm not saying like give us flashbacks. I'm not saying give us a long story. Just basically feed us something slowly and and tease us so we can understand and get invested in these characters. The same thing with Ghost. We saw her becoming what she is because of the explosion, but at the same time, those were done with one flashback. Why couldn't we see her having, when she's in the chamber, having nightmares or something about her family, or her dad in the explosion? The same thing is like we saw how the quantum entanglement affected Ant-Man. Why isn't she affected the same way? Is it because she hasn't been to that realm, or explain a little more of that? So to me, some of the characters were too rushed. The script was definitely too rushed for me. It did not fit. It was like a bad written anime filler episode, if that makes sense. What do you have to say about that, Touly?
In terms of like the good things about the movie, I would lean just more towards like potential. I feel like some of the ideas were there, but it just wasn't followed through. Or I mean, even I'm not sure if, there was any intention initially to follow through with those things. And you already brought up like a couple of them. We talked about Ghost already, but you also mentioned, of course, Hank, who again is played by Michael Douglas. Earlier, I said like you can make an argument that one of these characters, could have gone or could have crossed the line. So we mentioned what Ghost could have done, but I seriously thought out of all these contenders, the one who could have made the most impact, like move in the movie, was actually Hank, because I started to get the vibe at the beginning, or like towards like the first half of the film, that he was the sort of character who would go to any length to save his wife, knowing that there's an opportunity now to do so. But I suppose there wasn't enough of a backlash, despite his determination to save his wife, to make me feel like he crossed the line in any regards. Something had to give, and because nothing really did in the end, like nobody, I don't want to always resort to like somebody dying or anything, but there always has to be, in my mind, some type of consequence, your actions here, but nothing really happened. They were able to save, his wife. To me, like him getting to go visit the quantum world, that to me was like a win, like on a personal level too. If I were to like be in his shoes, I know, yes, his goal was to go there to save his wife, but he was like so in awe when he saw that side of what Ant-Man initially saw, right? Because he was like, well, he didn't say that this place was beautiful. He even mentioned that. So, yeah, I wish like something would have happened that would have balanced out their success at the end. Again, I'm always thinking of somebody like just dying, but I wish something should have given. Like, for example, what if, the FBI actually did catch Ant-Man, or I guess Lang, not being at his house, and now they have to make some type of sacrifice to kind of redeem what they were doing, because they were just in a lot of ways just being selfish, right? They just cared about their own goals. And even when in a particular part of the movie where Lang had to go back home because the FBI were going to be there, I think this was probably the first time he had to go back. Both Hank and the daughter Hope, they didn't seem that they cared whether or not he got caught or not. They were like just standing there and they didn't say anything. And then Lang was like, well, I have to go. And then he was like, okay, I'm going. Their reaction wasn't very, very strong. So to me, it didn't make them seem like they cared about his situation. Like they were just using the excuse of what happened overseas and how that got them into trouble to always get Lang or guilt trip him to get, to make him do stuff for them. That's how I kind of interpreted that. To me, that realization came from Ant-Man, when he realized if he didn't help out Hank and Hope in terms of like retrieving the building or whatever, then they wouldn't be able to save the person who they wanted to save. But at the same time, he's conflicted because he's putting his life and his daughter's life in jeopardy as well by leaving the house. So I felt like that was more on Ant-Man, but that too, though, the scale, the seriousness of the situation wasn't at a level where it made me feel, again, like invested in his sacrifice. It was there, but it wasn't like on a grand scale compared to like some of these other Marvel films. I guess the only good things I could talk about really is like the potential. I suppose the one concrete thing that I could say though about this film that I thought was well done, and if this wasn't like a Marvel film, and this was like a family film or a film about family, that would be pretty great. because I thought the relationship between Lang and his daughter, that was very, like, you knew like they really cared about each other. They got along really well. The way the movie started with them being in that little tunnel, and the way that, you know, the daughter reacted to Lang too, like she was very understanding despite her age, you know, being calling him like, you know, world's best grandma because that's the trophy. The way she covered up for him too when the FBI showed up. I mean, like, I thought like for like a daughter and father relationship, that was pretty well established. I guess that was probably the one concrete thing I could say about the film, that I thought like it was well done.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. The relationship they had was a special bond. Also, that scene where they're playing, you know, through the tunnels, that reminded me of Indiana Jones. The only thing that was missing was the boulder, because they go up to the trophy and that's when they grab it. But yeah, overall, I still think this movie kind of rushed it in a sense. First of all, I understand why they couldn't reference Infinity War, but at the same time, I've heard there's Easter eggs in there, like in the background, like some TVs playing news about what's happening around the world. But to me, I don't think the main concern should be tying it into other movies. First of all, you had the perfect relationship with the father and daughter. Play on that. Maybe have Ghost kidnap her, force his hand, develop Ghost a little more. And Bill Foster, he even said that he suited up as Ant-Man before, and they even compare sizes. So maybe he could have teamed up with Ant-Man and helped him by saying like, hey, yeah, I had the old suit, I still had it, sorry Hank, I kept it, something along those lines. But this movie didn't do that. It just felt like it was too rushed to me. Again, I'm using that word over and over, but it's the easiest thing I can think of. It was just too easy. Like they just thought about a story and said, okay, let's just do it. Don't add any more. I mean, you could have developed more of these characters. The relationship between Hope and her mom, Hank and his wife, talk more about the quantum realm. Because here's the thing. Now we're going to get into post-credit scenes. First of all, there's two post-credit scenes. One, it's them on top of a roof with a mini quantum tunnel, basically in the back of Lewis's van. And they dive into the quantum realm. Well, Ant-Man does, while Hope, her mom, and her dad are outside monitoring him. They're doing this because they want to retrieve the healing energy from the quantum realm for Ghost. So when they do that, they're in contact with him through a radio. And all of a sudden, he's like, okay, done here, pull me out. He hears nothing, just static. We know it's because of the Infinity War. Thanos snapped his finger. So he's stuck there. We see this outside shot and we just see them turn into ashes. So here's my question to Touly. Do you think the reason he did not disappear was because he was in the quantum realm? Or was it this 50-50 chance that he could have disappeared or not?
Yeah, I mean, you said that it's 50-50. It could go either way, but if I had to pick one side, I would say it was more of just a 50-50 where he just didn't get selected. Because they showed the other side of it, right? The Hope, Hank, and the wife. They're the one who disappeared instead of him. That's how I kind of looked at it. Like, because most of the scenes that we saw in Infinity Wars when one of the characters disappeared, they normally showed it where somebody survived or somebody lived on and somebody got turned into ashes. Except for the final post-credit scene between Nick Fury and the assistant. In that scene, they both disappeared. Normally, they would show one disappearing and somebody living on. And just from that pattern, that's why I'm leaning more towards like Ant-Man just didn't get selected versus him being in the quantum world because he's the one who remains. But at the same time, you could also make an argument that he's kind of stuck. Like how he's going to get out. Some people might allude to like maybe what Miss Marvel might be capable of doing to getting out of that circumstance, or unless he'll come back when Thanos does his thing. If I don't want to give away spoilers, but yeah, that's all I could come up with. I don't think it's because he was just in the quantum world that it prevented him from vanishing. I think it was just him just not getting selected. Otherwise, either Hope or the dad or the wife or the mom, however you want to describe her, one of them should have survived instead. So that's how I kind of looked at it.
Okay, well, I'm going to go the other route, and I'm going to say that the quantum realm does have to do something with him not disappearing. But before I get into that, let's talk about the second or the last post-credit scene. It's a simple one. You let the credits run until the end. You stay. as any Marvel fan would. We see the opening shot is of Lang's apartment, and you hear the emergency signal on the TV. Then it pans to Anthony, who's sitting drumming while listening to headphones, and he's just drumming, and that's it. Okay, so that brings up another question to you, Touly. Does Thanos snapping his finger and making 50% of the population disappear, does that include ants, insects, and every living thing in the universe? And if so, does that mean half of the ant population around in the whole world disappeared?
I suppose it depends how you look at it. Like, are you taking what they said about Thanos' ability there, like literally? If you are, then this should apply to every living creature, in the universe, right? So if you take it from a literal perspective, then I would say yes. Half the population or half the ant population, they're gone. But the way I perceived the ability, him being able to wipe out half of life forms and stuff, I just attribute that really to like the humans. Anything that represent that status quo figure in whatever planet or universe you're from. That's just how I perceived it. I didn't really take in consideration like animals or bugs or whatever. I mean, so again, I guess it depends how you look at it. If you're looking at it from a literal perspective, then I would say anything that's living. But for me, I just looked at more from the human perspective.
Okay, that's a good answer, and I will take that. But if I go with the literal answer, I'm going to go back to the first post-credit scene. If it's 50% of the population, then yeah, why did Hope, Hank, and his wife disappear? That might be, a roll of a dice. Probability is not always 50-50. There's, like you said, not everybody on the scene dictates a whole population. For those three people, maybe another family got to stay together. But brings it back to Lang. He's in the quantum realm. He didn't disappear, which leads me to my prediction of how it's, this is going to tie in more into Infinity Wars. We know that he's there to get ghosts or healing particles. Well, she is aware that they do this for her. I'm sure, because this is after they helped her. So if he doesn't appear for a while, either she's going to appear or Lewis is going to appear because his van, and they're going to take him out. Or Ant-Man is basically connected to radio. Once Anthony's in the apartment and he doesn't see him come back, he's going to probably contact him and say, hey, buddy, come help me. I'm over here. In comes Anthony, tries the ant. The incredible ant tries to save him. That could be one of the things before he teams up with Ms. Marvel. Or Ghost is going to go and save him, by actually getting him out. Now, I'm not saying that she's going to deep dive into the quantum realm herself, but she's going to help him out. This ties into maybe Ghost can be a likely ally in the Infinity War next movie, because we do see that she has the power to phase through. That's not a bad power to use against Thanos. That's what I'm thinking. So maybe she's going to also appear in Infinity Wars 2. I want to say I hope to see her there, but I'm not really sure. We haven't heard rumors. We never confirmed it or denied it by the studios. And here's the thing. For that character to just come in a movie and not show up again without her dying, that's not the Marvel way. So with that said, what do you think? How do you predict this is going to tie in more into Infinity Wars?
In all honesty, I just hope... I just want Ant-Man to be a part of it. Again, they use the excuse of him being under house arrest to not be, there in the first Infinity Wars movie. Especially after seeing Civil Wars and his impact there as I guess in that particular movie, it was more like a cameo appearance. But still, I thought that would have just played into Infinity War somehow, because now they have introduced him to the Avengers squad. Yeah, in all honesty, I just want him to be there in some regards. I'm pretty sure he'll make an impact of some sort, but I just want him to be there. I don't want them to use the excuse of him now being stuck in this quantum world as a way out again, just like how they used being under house arrest as a way out for him not to be there, because they're making this character, making Ant-Man, despite maybe some people not recognizing or knowing too much about Ant-Man, they're bringing his character out to the forefront now, so he should play some type of role in the next Infinity Wars movie. That's all I'm hoping for. In terms of how, I don't have any ideas of what he could potentially do. I just want him to be there. I guess that's probably the simplest request for me to have.
I feel the same way you do, especially since their excuse was, house arrest. I'm like, what superhero has ever said, I'll honor your house arrest right now while the universe is in danger, or I'm not going to bother him. It's okay. He's in his timeout. The same thing with Hawkeye. I understand why they probably didn't bring Hawkeye, because we know Hawkeye has not the best of abilities. He's only a sharpshooter. I think that's basically it. Plus, he has a circus background. But other than that, I really hope that Ant-Man does something that involves a quantum realm, because they touched upon this for a long time. Maybe this is a way out from Thanos' powers. Maybe he can use the quantum realm to leap from one stone to another, in the sense that, each one is his own realm. So he can probably use these as tunnels. Who knows? We're going to leave it at that and see what happens. So as of now, let's give it our final grade. Touly, what did you give this movie?
I think at the highest, it would be like from a 6 to 6.5. And this is me grading the movie for being a Marvel movie. When I think a Marvel movie is good, I typically give it at least an 8 or above score. But for this to fall under that radar, it might seem a little high despite us saying all these, or despite our criticism of the film. But it is rather low compared to like all the other Marvel movies. So yeah, I mean, it's okay if you like some comedy in your superhero movies. It's there, but I thought that it was a little too much, and it was actually one of the things that they were relying on to push the story forward, as I mentioned before. I personally wouldn't go back and watch it again. I guess that's another good way for me to kind of rate this film. If I don't have any desire to watch it again, then it wasn't like a great movie. It was just like, it was a Marvel movie. I went to go see it, and I'm done with it.
Yeah, same with me. One time was enough for me. I also gave it a 6 out of 10. Like I said, not a good standalone movie for Marvel, not a good tie-in movie for Marvel. It seemed like they tried too hard for something that could have been easy, or for the writers to write an interesting, captivating, character developing story with Ant-Man and the Wasp. Come on, this is Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's in the title. We didn't see anything develop between them two, except that they liked each other, and that's it. So that's my grade, 6 out of 10. Hopefully it gets redeemed by being that Ant-Man shows up in the next movie, Infinity Wars. He has a bigger role, like you said, no pun intended. But this movie, as a standalone Ant-Man movie, didn't really do it for me. Okay, and that does it for our review of Ant-Man and the Wasp. Catch us next time when we review Mission Impossible Fallout. And remember, keep watching movies.